Pipeline politics bubbling south of the border. Saskatchewan Premier Brad Wall's the latest to head to Washington in a bid to sell U.S. lawmakers on the Keystone XL pipeline project. Saskatchewan doesn't have a direct stake in the project, but it does stand to suffer if transporting energy to the U.S. isn't made easier. Premier Brad Wall joins us live from Washington. Good morning, Premier Wall. What are you hoping to accomplish in Washington?
Good morning. Well, we're here talking about Keystone, certainly, but we're talking more broadly about energy trade. We are, of course, a producer of 17% of the world's uranium, and this is a country that has a robust nuclear power program. We also have an exciting clean coal project, the largest in the world on an existing plant. And as the Americans look to what really is the environmental issue here in terms of energy, and that's coal, about 40% dependent on it for electricity, we think there's some currency there. There are other trade issues, country of origin labeling and agriculture, but we're here talking about Keystone. For us, right now, the differential or the discount at which basically we sell our oil here in this market costs Saskatchewan people who own that resource 19%. That's $300 million a year to the Treasury. It's $2.5 billion for our industry. And we also know that 15% of the oil in the pipeline at any given time, if it's built, will be Bakken oil from that formation that we grudgingly share with North Dakota and Montana. And so in that area there are pipeline capacity issues, and Keystone can help with those. So there's a lot at stake, and we had a good report, I think, from the State Department last Friday. But we ought not to be complacent as Canadians. We need to be here making the case, both from an environmental standpoint and an economic standpoint.
So whose doors do you knock on, Premier? Is it the State Department, or do you think you can get some traction with Congress or senators?
Well, Carrie Lynn Jones is the Assistant Secretary of State who has this file, and the lead official on the report that was released last Friday. We'll meet with her when we're here this week. And, well, we're going to thank the State Department for the report. We weren't surprised by it because it weighed in earlier on, basically saying there's not a real environmental concerns here. And that was when the Nebraska route was unchanged. It's now been changed. The governor of that state's supportive, and so we ought not to be surprised that they are. Still, we want to meet with the State Department. We just last night had a chance to run into Speaker Boehner. We chatted with him about Keystone. We had a chance to speak to a number of other members of the House over the next couple of days. I think it's a total of 15 members of the House, senators and Congress people, congressmen and women on both sides of the aisle. I just think we need to press this case, and we ought not to take anything for granted during what they're calling a comment period before there's a final approval on the pipeline.
Did Speaker Boehner support your position?
Yes, very much so. In fact, I think yesterday or the day before, he was out publicly calling on the administration for prompt approval to Keystone. We see support now on the left and right from an economic standpoint. Trade unions are lining up in favor of the project because of the 42,000 jobs in this country that is still looking for new jobs. And I think it's important now as Canadians we make the environmental case as well. The State Department helped with that last Friday. But our country has greenhouse gas regulations. We've got coal-fired generation regulations that are ahead of this country's. We have Alberta that was, I think, first to have a price on carbon. We have our own legislation. We have our own large clean coal investment. We need to make this case. I think that's the leeway we should be providing to the administration, because they're feeling pressure from those environmental groups who are not happy with the report last Friday.
Okay, interesting question, though, because we've got oil. They need oil. They need their economy to continue to grow on the basis of cheaper oil than they might currently be sourcing. You've got an environmental argument that you're putting forward. Why do you think this thing has not been approved yet? Is it strictly politics?
Yeah, I have to think it's strictly politics because, I mean, in fact, a lot of the editorials, there was one in the Washington Post yesterday, I think the New York Times, a lot of columnists, and not sort of small C conservative or big C conservative columnists, are weighing in and asking that very question. Why isn't this thing approved already? This is about an infrastructure project. 70% approval in a poll that Fox released yesterday. We see the State Department saying this is not going to contribute to significant expansion of the oil sands. We know that the oil sands account for 0.1% of CO2 on Earth. We know there's light sweet crude from regions like our province, or at least the formation we share with those two states, that's in the pipeline. You know, we know that Canada has a much better record from an environmental standpoint than Venezuela or Middle Eastern countries with whom we compete for that energy. So it's straight politics. And that's why we need to be here making the case. I'm going to be meeting with as many in the media here as I am decision makers, because we do need to keep that message front and center. It's important for the country. It's billions of dollars for Canada at stake, and a huge economic impact. So I think it's very important we're here, and I note the federal government has been very aggressive on the file of late. Good on them, and I think the provinces should be helping out where they can as well.
Premier, you brought up Venezuela. Hugo Chavez passed on. Will this change the dynamic of oil coming from Venezuela? I mean, he nationalized in 2007. Will any change come from his death?
I think it depends what the change is. You know, if it's more of a status quo situation, then I think the question is asked and answered. If there is a moderation there, you know, that could well impact the global energy politics and energy trade. But here's what it doesn't change. It doesn't change the fact that Venezuelan oil has got a very comparable CO2 footprint to Canadian oil sands oil, never mind our conventional crude oil that comes out of Saskatchewan's the second largest producer of oil and sells more oil to the United States than Kuwait. So it doesn't change the facts. And as the second president of the U.S., John Adams, said, facts are stubborn things. The fact is that we have the energy close to this market. We are a friend. We share values. The Venezuelan CO2 footprint, as I've mentioned, is very similar to even the oil sands oil. So the facts are unchanged, and I just think we need to stop being complacent as Canadians and be in this city and in this market making the case for our energy, especially when those are incorrectly describing it as dirty Canadian energy.
We wish you a lot of luck with that, Premier. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks for having me on the show. I appreciate it.
Okay. We've been joined from Washington by Saskatchewan Premier Brad Wall. He's there to lobby for the approval of the Keystone XL pipeline, as well as tout other resources in Saskatchewan.